Hey guys, RJ here. So I just want to walk you through something in SEM Rush that I think is really helpful that it just doesn't get a whole lot of use and attention for, but it's basically within the pages subcategory within organic search results when you go into pages. So let me give a little bit of context, kind of what's going on here. So we're working on this brand called ModCloth. It's women's clothing and fashion, all different types of products, an e-commerce site, about 20,000 pages or so, and we're working on this site, and what we really kind of want to see is why something in particular is happening in Google. So when you go to Google, you type in a keyword that could be like something like beautiful color dresses, right? You pop that in here and you get the SERP, right? And what happens oftentimes is like when you go into the first page, you don't see the brand, you don't see the URL of the site, in this case ModCloth. But when you go into the second page or anything after that, you start to see the brand. What happens here is this kind of self-competition. So here they have the general dresses page, right? So it's a e-commerce category page with all the different products that they have for dresses. And the query though is for beautiful color dresses. So kind of more generic page matching for a more specific page. Now I'm sure they have filters in the page that specifically relates to color dresses, but for some reason that page didn't outrank this particular page. This is the highest ranking URL for that particular query on this site. So what's really interesting here is that this self-competition begins to happen, and the reason why is that because every once in a while you have a couple of pages that are really authoritative pages, they have a lot of value, link equity comes into them, and Google sees them and trusts them. So even though it's not a direct match between the query and the page, Google tends to still show you within the consideration set, which here is 486 million search results. So what we want to do, we want to find all these cases. We want to see why this self-competition is happening and in which particular cases. And we also want to build a strategy with XML sitemap, priority tags, HTML sitemap. We may do like an internal linking strategy. We may do this through a series of sub-navigation, etc. Even through the breadcrumb itself, you can find a way to actually drive more equity. Now, what could even be an interesting thing is within these higher ranking sites is create an actual deep link strategy into these subcategories. So you could essentially have like a standard category page, but then you also have like people also search for kind of tile navigation, something that could take Google deeper into these particular queries. So within SEMrush, we're going to copy over the URL within pages again, and we're going to do a search for this particular site and all the pages that are ranking in Google. Now here you have desktop and mobile. You just toggle between the one you want and then select the country that you want. Here we'll select the US and we'll get current data. You can also go back date and time, back to other months, years, etc. However you want to filter this by. So one thing just to make sure here is that this is not the page that I wanted. So I'm going to go back into organic research. For some reason it kind of hops around. So let me go back into pages, organic research again, ModCloth. This is what I want to see. All right, so here I have my list of URLs and then my keywords. That's really what I want for this particular exercise. I'm going to export this. I want all the data. So once this is ready, kind of been playing around with some of the Excel sheets today. But once this is ready, you're basically going to get an Excel sheet. That's going to open up in Excel. We're going to just do a little bit of filtering to kind of get this in a working set for us. So let's expand this out. Let's drag this into view. Let's delete traffic percentage. And then we're going to actually add a new column. We're going to call this len, which is character count of the URL. All right, this is important because we essentially want to count how many characters are in the URL and then sort it ascending and get a sense of how the site's structured. So let me explain that. Obviously, I'm going to add all these cells together. I'm going to create a chart. I'll explain link in a second here. All right, so now I want to insert a chart. I'm going to do this dual chart, which is bar and line. And once that's ready, it's going to populate here. I'm going to squeeze this into view. And then in the far background, you can see a little bit of blue. Select that, secondary access. I also want to change the line here. So I want it just to be a standard line. And there we go. All right, so what we basically see here are all the pages of the site. Now they're kind of squished together, so that's not all of them. There's 13 some thousand for this particular version, which is desktop. And what we have here in the bar charts, the orange, is the number of keywords that each of these pages ranks for. So you can clearly see that some of these, probably like 15 pages, makes up 90% of all their rankings. And then you have these cases here, like this particular term. I can bring it up here. Like swimwear ranks for 2,500 keywords. Some of these other ones are ranking for what, a couple thousand. Oh, it's not bringing it up in the view. 1,300 keywords for this one, which is clothing and accessories. Plus size, 354 keywords. And you can also see that here within this column as well. But what's really interesting is when you can kind of plot this based off of the len character count, and that's what I want to explain. So this is essentially counting how many characters are in the URL. So when you count them and you sort them, you can see how the URLs are expanding and expanding and expanding. And we have to essentially widen the column to get them all within view. So basically what's happening here is we're getting a good sense of the site structure. We see how the directory and subdirectories are expanding out. And we can also see how they're using parameters. Once you get really, really deep into the site, you can see these URLs really get long really fast. And when you go back up to our little chart, you can then see that tail expand at the end here, and that's how they got long fast. And what we essentially want to see is are these pages ranking as you get deeper into products? And a typical e-commerce site, you have your homepage, category page, subcategory pages, and then just keeps going down in subcategory tree structure until you get into like a product level PLP, product level page, or product detail page, PDP, and then you got a really long tail of long URLs with all the product descriptions deep into like a subcategory. So the thing is, like, you want to have at least a couple of these keywords. Now, most of these are ones. If you can see the value, most of these are ones or single digits, and maybe some are double digits, but you don't get a whole lot as you get here. So there's very clear self-competition happening here. So that's what we want to take a look at. So what I do then is once I can kind of see if that's really the case, because if it's more even and I have more of these oranges spread out across the entire site, then it's probably not a major issue because those more specific pages are ranking. But this is a very clear case of self-competition. So especially with the home page here ranking for 12,000 keywords. So you can click into that, and then again, you can toggle between desktop and mobile. But what I want to use here is some advanced filters just to see kind of what's going on here. So I'll do something like exclude mod, which is the brand term, brand modifier, just to narrow this list down into non-branded keywords. And then I want to look at something like, include any of the URLs, any of the positions that are, let's say, less than, or actually let's do greater than 10. So I want to see anything that's not in the top 10 that's non-branded, that the homepage ranks for. So then what I get is a list of all these particular queries that people are searching for that the homepage ranks for, something like discount lady dresses, where I'm in position 100. Now, if there's a fair amount of volume for these terms, not for that one, which is surprising. But if there's a fair amount of volume for these terms, it may make sense to actually create content for these specific keywords and maximize the chance of ranking, because it could be that Google wants to rank the site, but they don't know what specifically to rank, and there's no specific pages for this. So they just rank the home page as a default. But because rank brain factor and Pogo's taking and bounce back and how much time someone spent on the site, if someone's searching for something so specific and they end up in the home page, it's very likely that they'll bounce back, and that could ultimately hurt all your rankings. So in terms of building out content, getting some good ideas in terms of very specific topics to write about or to create product level pages for if you're an e-commerce site, and then also just for building an internal linking strategy where we can get more equity to flow into these pages. This could be a great way to do that. So anyways, that's the visual here. This is something that obviously with a wider monitor you'll be able to dive further into. Another thing is that if you have really long URLs, which this site doesn't, you can go in and you can also, for example, find and replace the root and then just replace it with nothing. And then it just shortens all these URLs. That is not it. Sorry, that's HTTPS. All right. So that should shorten all the URLs and give you more of a reference point in terms of which directory and subdirectory you're on. Okay, again, bigger monitors gives you the chance to really modify this out a bit more, get a closer look into each of the URLs. So worth an investment if you're doing a lot of these. But that's it. Hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Take care. Bye.